Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Rachel Marshall, co-founder and owner of Rachel's Ginger Beer. After a 5-year post-collegiate stint living in the Bavarian Alps, Rachel returned home to Seattle and couldn't find the kind of ginger beer she had fallen in love with abroad. Bold, acidic, fresh, and not overly sweet. So she got to work perfecting her recipe to share with others. In 2011, Rachel and her partner, Adam Peters, founded Rachel's Ginger Beer. Working in a borrowed kitchen space, they created a beverage meant to play nicely with your favorite spirit, from vodka to tequila to bourbon, but serve you just as well the morning after. The company's workspace has since turned into a 10,000 square foot production plant in SoDo, with 6 different locations and a roster of flavors, parlaying 40 combined years of hospitality experience into their true passion. Welcome, Rachel. Good to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. As I'm reading this, I'm like, I love seeing the progression. I'm like, you start out and I can't wait to get into it. But before we get into it, we're going to talk rapid fire. Are you ready?
Hit me.
Okay. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
Well, I grew up in a very Christian home. So my first ambition was to be, for whatever reason, a missionary to Hong Kong.
Okay. Like we're talking like second grade or like middle school?
No, second grade, super young. And who knows why Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, of all places. Interesting. Is there a CEO or a leader or a person who you most admire?
Oh my gosh, so many. Probably Angela Dunleavy.
Oh, that's so awesome. I had her on the podcast. You have to listen to it. I agree with you. She's such a rock star and such a nice human being.
She's soft in so many ways and strong in so many ways. And I just love the fact that we came up in the same industry, hospitality, and she's parlayed so many years of industry experience into the nonprofit world and running a giant nonprofit organization, especially in the last year of COVID here in Seattle, and everything they've done for the community. It's pretty remarkable for her to maintain a family of 2 little boys. I also have 2 little boys, so I think that we really bond on that, and be an absolute leader, industry leader in the nonprofit zone and also hospitality.
Yeah, and just a community leader. She's amazing. I agree. Okay, so if there was a book written about your life, what would it be called?
Let's just wing it.
Let's just wing it. Well, you're winging it well. Like, I love it. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Extrovert to the max.
Nice. Which city do you most love?
Rome.
Okay, this is such a random question, but I'm actually curious about it. What's your favorite candy?
Oh my gosh. Do you know that place, the confectionery in
Yes.
New Village? I was there yesterday and she gave me these little candies from Belgium that are like Zots. Remember Zots?
Yes.
The 90s that fizz? They fizzed on the inside. There were these pineapple candies and they blew my mind.
So you're going to go back and get more?
Oh my gosh, Christy is the bomb. I will go there every day, mostly because I have 2 little boys who want me to go there every little day.
Of course. Okay, what is the most common word that people use to describe you?
Generous.
Oh, that's a good one. See, you're generous. You're taking your boys to get candy. A generous friend, giving shout outs to Angela. I can already feel it. So tell me, you started to say you were, when you were little, you were raised in a Christian family, but where exactly are you from?
I was born in Pullman, Washington, and I was born in 1980, and we moved from Pullman to Dallas, Texas in 1995.
Got it. And so your family was doing what in Pullman? Like, how did you grow up?
My parents are educators. They've always worked in private education, specifically Christian education. So they founded and grew a school in Pullman, and then work took them to Dallas, where they founded and grew a really unique model. It was unique at the time, kind of a university model of private school, kind of tailored to people that worked at embassies and people that traveled and homeschoolers. So if you want to do a couple of courses from home, you can do that. But if you need
that's awesome.
support in science or the arts or sports, then you get to pick and choose.
That's how it should be. That's how all schools should be.
It was really, it's brilliant. And it was brilliant at the time. And they made, what I was proud of was the exit that they made.
That's amazing. So when you were little, you said you wanted to maybe be a missionary. What were you like into school? Were you a good student?
No.
Were you ambitious to kind of go places, or were you think like what relationship did you have with like getting out of your current environment and success? Like how would you have been described in that way?
I really liked to work. I liked money as a kid. So my older brother, Jesse, is 20 months older than me. Then I have two younger siblings who are 6 and 8 years younger than me. And they are also 20 months apart. So it's like,
oh, wow.
Of kids.
Two little pods.
Yeah. And Jesse and I had a paper route together for years and years, a morning paper route, early morning. And it was awful, but we didn't realize that at the time. And being able to make money and have money was really big to me. And I don't remember when this book was published, but there's this book called Better Than a Lemonade Stand, and it was in the early 90s, and my dad bought it for me. And it was this Jewish guy that wrote it, and it was about all these entrepreneurial things you could do as a kid. And I'm
going to write it down. Better Than a Lemonade Stand.
Better Than a Lemonade Stand. Alex something, I forget now. I still have it in a box. But one of those ideas was dog walking. And I mean, this is probably 1993. Like there's no internet. There's no phone.
You're putting up little flyers all over the neighborhood?
Yes, in our church. And I walk dogs. So I'd like get up early, go get these people's dogs.
That's fantastic. And what were you into in high school?
Sports.
What sports were you playing?
Volleyball. I excelled at volleyball.
Oh, nice. Awesome. And so you said you were driven by money, and what made you feel successful? Was it, and you're an extrovert, so were you kind of the leader of the pack of your friends, or were you more like, when you think of money, is it from a perspective of like, this will provide freedom, or this will provide like, I can go buy those shoes I want?
I think the freedom to do what I want when I want.
Yeah.
Really.
And it sounds like you were always an entrepreneur. Like many people I've had on the podcast have done something like you're talking about, like a paper route or like walking dogs, like just industrious, being creative and figuring it out and wanting that independence. Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so then you ended up like moving on and leaving. And tell me about school, about college.
I attended the University of North Texas in Denton. Awesome school, really great liberal arts public school. What was really cool about that was that Denton is this cool liberal pocket in an otherwise, some would say, conservative state. And it's a jazz performance school.
Oh.
So the local arts, local music scene was so vibrant. Now definitely, but certainly then in 1998 to 2004, I was on the 6-year plan. And all of our friends were in bands, and all of my friends and I worked in restaurants, which is kind of this natural culmination of people that work and play together. Denton was amazing. I loved college. I was a terrible student. I loved working.
And you were working as a bartender, making the cash.
Yes. And then I caught the travel bug immediately in college, and every summer save, and then go to Europe. And that was going to Europe absolutely changed my life when I turned 19.
I love Europe. And when are you going to go now that the pandemic and, the vaccinations, and are you going to head there?
We're just waiting for Germany to let us in.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when did you meet Adam, your like business partner and husband?
So I failed my last class of college, which was a summer Spanish class. I'd finished I was a business major, finished everything, and it was an elective that I needed. And I stayed in Europe too long. And I was there traveling, and I thought, I'm going to extend it by 2 weeks. Surely when I get back for summer school, I'll be able to make it up. And that teacher was like, no.
Not happening.
And I went to my mom and dad, and I was like, I am not ready to enter the workforce. I don't want a corporate job. I was preparing myself for a corporate job in marketing. I wanted to work at Gatorade or Frito-Lay. There were a lot, Toyota. There were lots of big, cool
consumer goods. Yeah.
Yes. Lots of cool companies in Dallas. And I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be in Europe.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad, God bless them, said, okay. And I was at a friend's house drinking after work one night, one of our band friends, and a friend of theirs was visiting from Germany, and an American. She worked at this resort south of Munich that was owned by the Department of Defense. She did housekeeping or something. And she said, there's this cool resort. Parallel to that, I was also dating a German soccer player.
You like the Germans.
I love the Germans. So he was a professional soccer player who was on trade to the professional team in Dallas. I met him at the restaurant. He was from Munich. This friend lived south of Munich. I thought, wait a minute, here's my ticket. And I applied for the job, got the job, moved to Europe. We broke up. We're still friends. Our little boys are still friends. And I met Adam, who was also working at the resort. And so he went after college and stayed for 13 years.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
He's where is he from?
He was born in Oklahoma, went to the University of Florida. He's a Gator. And went to Germany for the same reasons, just to go travel and live, and stayed for 13 years.
So walk me through the conversation when you're thinking about starting Rachel's Ginger Beer, because you started it. What year was it that you started it?
2011.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you've had it 10 years.
Yes.
So you were a young entrepreneur, right? And was it just like, hey, how did you fund it? Like, how did you even do that?
We did not fund it.
Who funded it?
Nobody funded it.
Like, how did you even get this thing going? I need to know all.
Yes, I will tell you everything. We had no money. We kept our jobs. Adam was bartending down by the stadiums when he eventually moved here from Europe. I was waiting tables. I worked at Lark. God bless them. They started this company. They let me use their kitchen in the off hours. John Sundstrom and JM and Kelly have been immeasurably generous to us. So I worked at Lark. I worked at Oddfellows. I worked at Delancey.
All great restaurants. Wow.
Oh my gosh. And all of my favorite people, John and JM, and Linda is one of my biggest mentors, and Brandon Pettit at Delancey. So we waited tables and bartended at night, and then we made ginger beer in the middle of the night after our shifts.
And tell me how you, I wouldn't even know if I was suddenly like, you know what, I'm really wanting some ginger beer. Like, I'm guessing sugar.
Yeah. So
what goes in there?
It's a 4-ingredient recipe. It's, and I think that adjectives are what's most important. It's fresh lemons, fresh ginger, whole cane sugar, and Seattle water, which we know is the best water in the world. But most importantly, it's the fresh lemons and the fresh ginger. That's what sets it apart.
And so you're making it, and when do you know that it's like, okay, this is good? And then how do you even know about packaging it or distributing it, like all of it?
Slow and steady wins the race. It just slowly and steadily. We had no money, so there was no seed money. There wasn't like 20 grand. There wasn't 5 grand. There was nothing. My my really big ambition was to get into the Seattle farmers markets. And those of us that live in Seattle, and maybe people that live elsewhere in the US, understand that Seattle has remarkable farmers markets. And they're such a cool business model because the point of entry is really cheap. You don't pay for rent 30 days a month. You pay for rent 1 day a week. And what you get is a limited time offer. You get a lot of people that show up for 4 hours, and if you're going to create a cool product, that is where you on-ramp it, is at the farmers market. They're a really good test environment. People at farmers markets know what they want, and they have time for what they want, and they do not have time for what they don't want. And it's a really great way to make money really quickly.
Yeah. So how long between the time that you're working in the middle of the night, putting together this concoction of fresh everything, to the time that you go into the farmer's market? And did you do it weekly? And who worked there? Was it you and Adam?
It was me. It was me.
It's a lot of physical labor. My husband was doing farmers markets for a while with a product. And
oh, really?
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's a really difficult way to make a living.
Yeah, especially because you can't necessarily measure it, because you're like, okay, my time and all the effort, and then whatever you're making at the end of it is like, was this worth it? But it's testing the market, like you said.
Yeah, it's such a quick on-ramp, and such amazing exposure. I think maybe from the time we started testing, let's call it 6 months. I don't know if that's accurate, because the last 10 years has been a total blur, but.
Right. And was there a moment from there where you're like, okay, I have something here? Like, what was that pivotal moment when you felt the momentum, like, I've got now the wind behind me?
It was probably the second week of the farmer's market, and we were selling little 12-ounce bottles that we individually filled, we individually labeled, we individually wrote the date, the born on date, in a pen, in a little tiny Sharpie pen. And the second week of the farmer's market, people came back and they were like, okay, this is amazing. What else? And we thought, holy smokes, like, look around. Like, there's the cherry guy and the raspberry guy and the nectarine guy. And I thought, what would it take to get people to consume more of something similar, more flavors of something similar? And that was so cool, because at the end of the market, and it's remarkable the camaraderie that's built in the farmers markets. Lifelong relationships we've formed. But the nectarine guy at the end of the farmer's market, it's like, hey, we have 50 pounds that are left over. We'll sell them to you for pennies on the dollar. We'll sell you these raspberries for pennies on the dollar. So we would take them and spin them into ginger beer and sell them the next week.
Oh, that's amazing. What was the very first flavor that you had, your first concoction?
I think that it was nectarine, and we pulled it the second we introduced it, because it tasted just slightly fermented. Like, the nectarines had just turned a teeny tiny bit, and I took a sip and I was like, nope, we're dumping it out. We're dumping all of it out. And, we had no money. We're just dumping things down the drain. And I guess.
But you knew you had the customer demand, and you knew that you were starting to get a following, like people coming to seek you out.
Correct. And that attention to just the thought that somebody would taste something that wasn't perfect is still to this day what keeps me, it's my 3 a.m. fright. Yeah.
And so how many flavors do you have now?
Oh boy, maybe around 13, I think.
Wow. And what's the best selling one?
Pink guava.
Pink guava. I love guava juice. I need to try that one.
Oh, it's so good. And you have not lived until you have a pink guava Moscow Mule.
Love it. Love it. How did you come up with the name? How did you decide it was going to be Rachel's, not Adam's?
Well, it was my idea.
Yes.
And I still regret a little bit. I regret the name. I'm uncomfortable.
You do? I think it's super catchy. It makes me, I love the name. Love the name. Yeah.
Why? Why?
Why do you regret it?
It feels too forward facing. It feels a little bit narcissistic, and it was really just necessity. we were making this ginger beer and working in restaurants, and our friends that worked in this, that, and the other bar were like, this is delicious. Sell it to us, sell it to us, sell it to us. We were like, holy smokes, we got to make this thing legit. Because it was all not permitted. So we had to file articles of incorporation with the state of Washington. They're like, okay, what's the name? And we were like,
well, it's Rachel's Ginger Beer. Yeah. And that's probably what all your friends were calling it. Right. They're like, have you tried Rachel's Ginger Beer? Like, yeah, of course.
And I still sometimes walking down the street, I'll see somebody in a t-shirt or like with a cup of ginger beer. And I'm just like, oh.
No, I think it's great. And so then how did you come up with the packaging and the logo and all the marketing and branding? I think it's really well done.
Thank you for saying that. It's really kind. It's all, as with anyone, very intentional. We've worked with the same crew since day one. Camp Doug is the name of the firm we work with. And, these are homies of ours that, I guess a side note is that while RGB was being formed, my best friend Kate and I opened a bar on Capitol Hill called Montana. And it's this dive bar on East Olive Way. And we were the first people in town to do cocktails on tap. And in 2010, whenever we opened, 10 years ago, we were the first. And so we had Moscow Mules on tap with Rachel's Ginger Beer, and it was an instant success. And it was funded by angel investors, by all of our regulars at the restaurants we worked at. They all loaned us, we cobbled together 70 grand. And then Adam, Kate, and I bartended together, and we poured Moscow Mules for everyone. And one of our earliest regulars was Camp Doug. And they were like, they were just coming out of art school and let us do your brand. We're like, we can't afford you. And eventually we all worked together, and we still work together.
That's a great story.
Remarkable.
And how many people do you have in the company that work for you?
If you'd asked me this before last February, it would be 100. And now, we must be hovering around 50. And obviously we're all rebuilding after COVID and expecting to return to normal.
Yeah. Tell me about COVID. How did it impact the business? Specifically, I've got several friends in the industry, and the stories are so intense. Your industry got hit so hard.
Yeah, really devastating. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks before COVID hit, we opened a really beautiful store directly across from the Spheres down at Amazon headquarters here in Seattle. And the day that Amazon sent all of their employees home it was just dystopian down there.
Yeah.
National news showed up. I cried on national television thinking this is going to be the worst 2 weeks ever.
Thinking it's going to be 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Oh, my employees, what are we going to do? And little did we know. It's been an extremely challenging year. We've been helped a lot by the federal government. We are really, really, really frugal in a very boring way. And we've made it. And
good for you. So you had the 100 people, now you're at 50. What types of people did you have to, unfortunately, furlough or lay off?
Hourly employees, people that helped us make the ginger beer, and then the people that work with us in the stores serving the ginger beer, because Amazon closed, Pike Place Market closed, everything closed for quite some time.
Yeah. For people who don't know Rachel's Ginger Beer, where can they find it, and where are the stores?
Sure. So we ship nationwide, all over the US, rachelsgingerbeer.com. And then we have 4 shops here in Seattle. Our flagship store is right in the heart of Pike Place Market. We have a store up on Capitol Hill, one in University Village, and then right across from the Amazon Spheres.
What is your role versus Adam's role?
Adam oversees all of production and distribution. Mm-hmm. And I oversee all of retail and community relations, which is probably the biggest part of my role.
And what are you thinking about right now as far as distribution? Is there an area that you're like, hey, maybe we should pivot in this way, or think about different channels?
I think that Whole Foods Market has been a really great partner with us. And I think if we're going to think very macro, it should be Whole Foods all over the US. That would be a really wise way to go.
And is Whole Foods down with that idea?
Yeah, they're a great partner.
Yeah. How did you get in there? Do you remember that like experience in that moment of finding out that they're ready to carry it? Oh, they called you proactively.
They did.
That's so cool.
I'm kind of, so there's a lot of upsides and downsides to taking money and not taking money. A great upside to taking money is you can grow rapidly and get wide distribution quickly and probably make an exit if you want. An upside to not taking money is you grow slow and steady and you call all the shots. And for whatever reason, that's been the decision we've continued to make. So I thought when the time is right and the price is right, then we'll partner with the right people kind of on our terms.
Yeah. Is there any place that you would love distribution that you've been trying to get into, or that's not the model where you're proactively reaching out?
It's not our highest priority right now.
Yeah. And do you feel, I hope you feel, but I'm curious, do you feel successful?
Yes.
You do. And is there a, like, if I were to hit it, like, this is where it would be? Like certain entrepreneurs is like this, just never ending, that level of like where you're trying to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, there's so many answers to that.
Right. The answer could be around like visibility, like it's a household name. Everybody knows Rachel's Ginger Beer. Like that to me, if I was you, that would be amazing to just, like you said, walking down the street and seeing people wear t-shirts. So cool to be like, I remember like, still to this day, if someone's like, oh, I've heard of Fuel Talent and I'm like, really? It's so dumb because I would hope that they would have heard of Fuel Talent, and especially in Seattle, but it's cool when it's your thing and you're like, really? Or people say they listen to the podcast,
It feels so good, doesn't it?
It does feel good. It feels like your hard work is paying off and that people appreciate it.
Yeah.
So the success for you would be.
Yeah. I feel like I'm there.
Yeah, good. That makes me happy to hear. That makes me super happy to hear. And do you make decisions based more on data and analytics or based more on your gut?
Gut.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm like, this is a gut person for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me about you as a leader. Like, what would the 100 people that have worked for you over time, I guess it's been more, say about you? How would they describe your leadership?
I don't micromanage. I'm not politically aligned with Mark Cuban, who is on Shark Tank and is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. I'm a huge sports fan, especially women's sports. But I read him saying one time, hire the best people in the world and then get out of their way. And that was really, really good advice for me to hear, because when we first started, I by nature am a micromanager. I just want everything perfect all the time. Get out of my way. You're not going to do it right. And it's not sustainable. I have little kids. I have a family. I have a lot of friends that I want to invest in and invest my time in. And micromanaging everything was destroying me. We hired the most remarkable operations manager. Her name is Doe Driver, and she runs this ship. So when Huck, I have two little boys, Huck and Wyatt. Wyatt's 7.
Oh, what cute names.
Thank you. Huck is almost 4. And when Huck was born, when Wyatt was born, Kate and I were opening a bar that was delayed. And it opened about 2 weeks after Wyatt was born. And I spent every second there with a brand new baby. I mean, I remember our opening party, like bending over the dishwasher to load it and like smelling my breast milk.
Oh, geez.
Crying because I wasn't with my child. I couldn't take the time off to be with my kid. So when Huck was born, I promised myself I'm going to take 1 year with no childcare. Of course, it doesn't mean 1 year no work, because the emails come and everything's still there, but I had him with me all the time. And during that time, Doe came up and just took my job away from me, which was remarkable because she's so capable, but difficult coming back a year later. I came back and I was like, okay, guys.
Yeah, you're like, I'm here. And you're like, oh, wait.
What do you guys need?
Yeah. And did you have a little bit of the like imposter syndrome of like, well, wait, where do I fit into this whole thing?
Yeah. And I still have it. You know, I called Tom Douglas like a couple of weeks after I came back. I was like, I'm having an existential moment. Will you meet with me? And he was like, yeah, come on down. And I was like, Tom, what do I do? And he said something that I will never, ever forget my entire life. Because I was like, do I expand? What do we go nationwide? And he said, why have grand when you can have beautiful? And like, that still really, really stops me. Do I need everything when I can have something just beautiful and local and all these amazing people in this community?
Yeah.
It was.
Did you ever try to go for like all of the different like awards and different things that,
no,
you know, all of those. So I've done a little bit of that and we've gotten some great recognition, which is awesome. But one of the things I went for, really wanted to hear me say like, we're going to go nationwide and we're going to 100 million and and I was really authentic talking about like, for me, the measure of success is like the depth of my relationships and the meaningfulness of the placements that we make in companies, that they like stay and they get promoted and that we change people's lives. And it's so funny because afterwards I was realizing like, oh, maybe I should have said, and I'm like, no, we have to be authentic to who we are, you know? And if it's like, hey, I do want beauty and I do want like to feel authentically like myself, not just grand and revenues. I think it's great advice. And most people don't, they're thinking they're measuring themselves by grand. Or thinking like revenues versus even profitability, right?
1,000%.
Yeah.
You have giant revenues and you gave away 75% of the pie because you needed to raise your seed money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you have at the end of the day? You have no control because you gave away your control and you only have a small piece of the pie. When I was thinking about coming and talking with you and really looking forward to it, I was thinking about something that's really been bugging me about entrepreneurship culture in the last 10 years that I've come up. And I think I talk with a lot of friends and people that friends introduce me to who are coming up with it, primarily consumer packaged goods brands. And this kind of pervasive narrative is seed money. We're going to hire a co-packer. We're going to get in every Whole Foods in the US, and then we're going to make an exit by this. And that I want to exit at 5X, and this is what I want. And I don't think that people understand how long it takes to make something that's perfect and beautiful and understood and successful. And I think that if you are in this to make an exit, and I'm no expert, but I think that you won't succeed.
Well, you also want to enjoy the journey. It sounds so different to hear you speak about it like that, because one is like there's this destination and the other is like I'm on this journey. And your story has been much more of a journey story than I've got this North Star of where I'm trying to go. And it's probably made you a lot happier as an entrepreneur, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend. Like you're stopping to smell the roses. You feel gratitude. Even the fact that you're saying like, I feel successful is like, if you had that North Star, you'd be like, well, wait, I'm not at 50 million. And I had said 50 million, you know, or whatever.
And if your goal is the exit and you fall short of that, I feel like the chances that you're going to give up and peace out are higher.
Totally.
You know,
totally.
Some of the most gratifying experiences for me are the farmers market regulars that I met at the Queen Anne Farmers Market 10 years ago. And like, there's this woman who showed up and she was bald and she said, I'm in the middle of chemo. My stomach's upset. I had your stuff. It calms my stomach. And I keep seeing her year after year, you know, out by U Village, and like moms I met that were pregnant, and now I give, you know, their 9-year-olds a hug.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Like, that, like, I don't know. I don't know if you can measure that. I don't know if you can quantify that.
Yeah. Well, it's about impact, and it's about people thinking about you when you're not even aware they're thinking about you, and the effect that you've had on them, and your product is like resonating. It's amazing. So how have you gone about building your culture, finding talent? Obviously, you know, as a recruiter, I got to ask these parts too.
I mean, the hiring culture right now in, you know, May of 2021 is really different than it was 10 years ago. There's no one to hire right now. It's really, really difficult out there. But I think our values are really important to us. The LGBTQIA community was who propped us up at the Capitol Hill Farmers Market when we first started, and like they are our people, and so we've always, and they're, you know, just, it's just so fun to work with so many people that are in art and theater and doing all kinds of artistic, fun, cool, creative things. But I really believe that people can talk till they're blue in the face about culture, but to me, it comes from the top. It comes from the way that Adam and I interact with each other, and the way that we interact with our second in command, Doe, and with all of our other coworkers. It's the way, like, for instance, the way you walk into a restaurant, one of our restaurants, having worked for so many other people for all my life, you know, there's nothing more frustrating than the owner that is never there, but they walk in on a Friday night and it's busy and it's humming and the lights are perfect and the music's perfect and the guests are happy and everyone's smiling, and they like look down on the ground and they see a beverage napkin on the ground. They're like, why is there a beverage napkin on the ground?
Yeah, you're like, seriously?
Pick up the beverage napkin.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking that so many times as a server or as a bartender, and like, when I am an owner, I will never be the person that my crew is scared to see. So like, I want to be the person that shows up and I'm there for the high fives. I'm there to get a cup of ginger beer and tip you $10 or whatever.
I love that so much, Rachel. I mean, it's almost the same as people I've had on the podcast and just friends who have raised money who talk about investors and are like, I don't want to panic when the phone rings and it's my investor. Yeah. I want somebody who's got me through the good, through the bad. And the employees feel the same way. They don't want to feel like they're getting called to the principal's office.
Yes.
You know, that Sunday night feeling when they see you. Like, it's a terrible stomach feeling. And especially right now, and especially this generation of new college grad level people, they want purpose, they want impact, and they want to feel good at work. And they definitely look for it in a different way than just like, oh, here's my paycheck. And I don't think they would tolerate it. So I think it's amazing that you're creating such a culture and that you get it. You totally get it. So you're doing this, you're doing it with your husband. You've got the 2 boys, Huck and Wyatt, cutest names ever. How do you balance it all? Like, what do you like to do when you're not at work?
I have a bicycle that I ride a lot.
Like indoor Peloton-y type of deal or outdoor?
No, I have one of those rad bikes from Ballard.
Ooh, nice.
They're rad.
They're a client of ours. I love rad power bikes.
They're rad.
They are rad.
Yeah, so I live by the lake, and I ride this 10-mile loop every day, and I never take my phone, which is probably unwise, but I have nowhere to stick it. So maybe
get a little pouch. So you're riding your bike around the lake, and then how about just like your dream weekend? Let's say without kids. Like, I love my kids, but you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. My dream weekend, I'd be in Europe.
You'd be in Europe.
Yeah, I'd probably hike to a hut and drink a beer or a Weisswein Chorley and eat some white asparagus.
And do you have like rituals or habits that we can learn from, of like ways that you set yourself up for success? I like the riding your bike, by the way, without a phone. I actually felt like light when you said that. I was like, "Ooh, that sounds good."
Rituals. I surround myself with incredible women. I have just.
I want in. I think you're awesome. We have to like hang. I love it.
Force field.
I've got a force field also. We got to merge.
Golly, it's just remarkable the way that everyone has hedged each other in the last year. And not drinking too much. That's big. Exercising. I don't know. Listening to NPR. I wish I had something more remarkable.
NPR sounds like that does not, I'm like, that's a ritual that's good, but sometimes it can be so depressing.
Oh my God, I know.
Those are all good ones. Exercising, kind of like watching your, alcohol intake. It's all good stuff.
I see my parents a lot. I'm really close to my mom and dad.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to get together a group of women. I'm literally going to work on it when we get off. And I know how busy you are, so I'm super grateful that you were on the podcast. I have one final question, and that is, what fuels you? What's your ultimate fuel?
That human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights. And that is said by the mother of them all. And her name is Hillary Clinton.